Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and the Crusades, the Real Crusades History live stream. I'm J. Stephen Roberts, and I've got a very special guest with me today. We are getting ready for the release of the Knights of the Cross pilot this weekend. So I wanted to bring on one of the actors who is a part of the show, Mr. John Wilson. John, thanks for being here. How's it going?
Oh, it's going so good. Nice to be here. Thanks, Jay.
All right. Really glad to have you here today. So some of you guys may have watched us talking about this, and John actually played King Richard for the pilot episode. So did an awesome job with that. We were all really glad to have you on set. John, you did a great job. Did you have fun doing that?
Oh, no, it was fantastic. It was like every, I think, actor's dream to get to play some sort of Lord of the Rings-esque warrior king. So the fact that I got to do it this early in my personal career filled my heart with great joy.
Yeah, you definitely, filled the role very well. Really executed it well. So, and it's cool. Everybody's gonna get to see the pilot episode this weekend. So, I think we have made the official announcement that this Friday, the 18th, it is going to be live. The Knights of the Cross pilot episode will be live on my YouTube channel on Real Crusades History and the Christian channel as well. So you guys will be able to check that out. But let's go ahead and jump in here. You guys can kind of get any questions you have ready. This obviously, since John's here, this would be a good time to ask him questions about the show or about his acting and all that good stuff. But let's go ahead and check out this little featurette for the pilot, as which was created recently for us by the guys at Cinema Forte. So we will go ahead and play that.
We wanted to portray a story about someone who is deeply driven by his faith, which is something I believe our world needs right now.
When the Christian channel approached Cinema Forte about this project, telling the story of King Richard Lionheart, we were really excited. It was a great opportunity for us to show creativity and push the boundaries of what's out there for Christian TV.
To get a vast difference between locations, we used green screen technology coupled with the Unreal Engine.
We were able to do a virtual scout in the Unreal world in order to choose our camera angles the same way we would have in real life if we had gone to a location.
We loaded up the environment that we created. We were able to place the sun and the castle where we wanted, and the landscape that was right for the scene. Once we got on set, shooting green screen, we knew where our sun was, so we could place the lights in the same angle. But once we got to compositing, the way the actor was lit matched seamlessly with the virtual environment.
My favorite scene was the scene in the cathedral. Not only was it a great opportunity to portray the beauty of the Eucharist, but to also metaphorically show how Richard's resolve is empowered by this communion with God.
When we were researching for the look of the show, we looked at Renaissance art as well as other period medieval art. We liked the feeling that some of these images portrayed, and we really wanted to capture that and inject that same feeling into the show. When I was researching about King Richard, I was excited to tell the story about someone who was so driven by their faith in God. And I wanted to portray what it would take for somebody to have that kind of faith and what made them tick, what would motivate them to do the things that they did. Another thing that I loved about the story is that it casts light on just how imperfect faith is. Faith is a work in progress, and our characters in the scenes ebb and flow between supporting each other and doubting. And I think it's a really interesting portrayal of what faith is and what it means to our audience. It's been a pleasure to be able to work on this project and to have the opportunity to tell the story of King Richard, someone who's so well known to so many.
Join us and help us make the most epic Crusader production of all time. All you have to do is go to knightsofthecross.com and select a pledge to join us on this crusade.
All right, very cool. So that's the featurette. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. What'd you think, John? Have you seen that yet?
I have seen that yet, probably more times than I'd care to admit. I've rewatched it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I mean, the guys at Cinema Forte just have really done some amazing work, and I'm just really impressed by what they've been able to bring to the table. So, yeah. So it's pretty awesome. But yeah, it's good to have you here. I mean, we really had a lot of fun filming the pilot. I guess, God, it's been a while now. It's kind of crazy how much time has passed since we did that.
Yeah,
But
it was back in August, right, or July?
yeah, it was the summer. I believe, God, yeah, it was July, August, kind of around then. So I know that Greg and Aaron at Cinema Forte have just done a lot of work getting everything ready for
Yeah,
the episode.
yeah.
So very cool. So before we get into some questions from the audience, I was going to ask you just some stuff I had for you.
Yeah.
So what's your background as an actor like? How did you get into this, and what's some of your stuff you've done so far?
Yeah. So I was a sports kid growing up. My dad was in the military and I grew up doing community sports. And then eventually he left, retired from the military, and we went into like normal life, which was surprisingly different from the military life. And one of the things that was also vastly different was just the way school sports were handled. And for whatever reason, as a kid, I just didn't like I was in middle school and I didn't like the energy of school sports in the normal world, where it was sort of like, yeah, you've got to get good so that you can get into the high school team, so that you get drafted in the college team, so that you can become the major leagues. Like, I'm competitive, but not for that reason. So I got kind of turned off, and then I was sort of looking for an avenue. I did gymnastics for a little while, but I also didn't want to like become a gymnast and join the team. And eventually I kind of stumbled into dance, ironically enough. And then my sister and I danced for a couple of years, and then I ended up trying out for a musical my freshman year of high school. And that was kind of it for me. I did my first show and I was like, aha, this is, it really for me was a night and day thing where I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. And so I studied musical theater in college at Brigham Young University in Utah. And then my wife, who's also a performer who was in the program with me, we moved out to New York City in 2016 to pursue Broadway and to try to climb up in the professional ranks of theater, musical theater particularly. But then, so we had a ton of fun out there. We did regional shows across the country in various productions. And right before the pandemic, we were sort of fighting and vying in the loops to be on Broadway for various things. We were in final callbacks for the tour of Frozen that was going out. And then the pandemic shut everything down. But what it did for us actually was a huge blessing. We'd always wanted to do more film and TV work, but because we'd already invested so much time in trying to build up our relationships and momentum in theater, we really didn't have time to do it, because they really are separate worlds professionally. Until you're at the very, very top of the theater world, then people kind of make the jump into TV and film and stuff. But in general, they're almost mutually exclusive industries. But the pandemic gave us the opportunity to shift, which is something we'd always wanted to do. So we started training in film because a lot of the prestigious classes went virtual. And then we moved out to Utah just for a change of scene after staying with my parents up in Washington. And Utah is a pretty bustling young film and TV community. It's not in LA, but it's sort of like it's got a lot of new energy. So it's a perfect place to be doing this. And we managed to get film agents here. And this is I think this is actually the first TV thing that I've ever done. My first TV episode. I'd done a couple of commercials leading up to this, and one small supporting role in an indie film that we shot in Staten Island when I was out in New York. So I'm still pretty young when it comes to film, TV, acting in this medium, but I have a really long history of professional training in theater.
Very cool. I know that when we were filming the show, it's kind of interesting because apparently the day before your wife had given birth. Is that correct?
Yes, the morning of the first shooting day.
Which was kind of amazing.
And I told my wife, we were, as we were leading up to the shoot day, I was like, if you could just hold on, wait until after we're done. And then the irony is that our daughter came that morning at 6 a.m. of the shoot. And I texted the director, Aaron. I was like, Aaron, my wife's in labor.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed that your wife was willing to let you come, work on the shoot with us that I mean, but she's an artist herself, so I guess that
Right,
makes sense.
right. She was a trooper. She was like, "You better get out there. You better do that episode. Dang it!" And I was like, "Okay, hon." So we came back, and luckily, it was the low risk pregnancy, and my wife was a champ, and things went really smoothly. We were able to get her set up with a friend to watch her. And once we made sure that everything was okay, I, gave him a kiss. My little daughter said, "Go out there, Dad, and be a star," and went out to set that morning.
Well, yeah, congratulations on the new baby. So I guess she's what, a few months old now?
Yeah. She's 3 months now at this point.
Is she sleeping
Oh,
all
yes,
night?
it would have
or
been.
is she-
So yeah, we shot beginning of August. August 2nd was the shoot day because
Yeah,
that's
that's
the day
right.
my daughter
Yeah.
was born.
Is she waking up at night still? I mean, I guess
You know what?
she's
For
gotta
the
be.
last week and a half, we've been sleep training, and for the last few days, she's gone to bed all by herself and slept 12 hours.
Okay, that's pretty good at that age. So
Yeah.
very, very cool. So a couple of questions here. Alexander was asking, where was the show filmed?
Mhm.
Yeah, it was filmed in Salt Lake City. That's going to kind of be our home base for the whole project. And I guess, as you mentioned, John, that is a burgeoning film locale. There's more and more of that going on there, and I was pretty impressed by the professionalism and the level of filmmaking that was available to us there. So
Yeah.
I guess that's been your experience so far, being part of that
Absolutely.
community.
Yeah, I mean, they've got like the Sundance Film Festivals in Sundance, Utah, which is just up the canyon from Provo. And it's like the most prestigious film festival in the United States. So it really does have this sort of hotbed of artists and creators here in sort of the Salt Lake and Utah counties. It's awesome.
And then we got Sam in the chat. Sam was one of
What's
our
up, Sam?
yeah, Sam was one of our resident reenactors, equipment managers, who did a really good job for us.
Yeah, no, Sam helped me outfit, and I was asking Sam a lot of questions about sort of like the proper movements and use of things with the period tools that we had in the armor pieces. So Sam was a big help on set.
And speaking of that, Lambert is asking, what kind of training did you do to prepare for the role?
Yeah.
Language, dialect, martial. What goes into that, John?
It was fascinating because so some projects you'll have time, like a lot of time to get ready. You get notified that you've been cast, and let's say you've got like a month or something to sort of prepare, and you might have that on a larger project. For this one, because it was so grassroots and so like run and gun, where it was sort of like the production, we were just trying to get the most creative, most gung-ho set of people together to shoot this in the time and the budget that we had. I didn't have a ton of time to do any extra prep. So what it really came down to, thankfully, was I think, and this was the reason why I got cast, is all of the training I'd done in my career up to that point. I'd done quite a bit of dialect training. I'd done quite a few productions with a British accent. Period training. There's a different sort of acting style when you're trying to reenact a period as opposed to reenacting a modern thing. And I'd done all sorts of training like that through college. We call it extended realism is the term for anything that's sort of like pre-modern era. So there's a lot of like understanding about the way you behave with each other that's a little bit different than you interact, especially like interacting male to female or male to male, in terms of like, what is the decorum? What are the relationships like? How does that demonstrate itself in the way that you move and the way that you stand? And so I think a lot of that training that I already had was able to shine through in the audition that I did, and was able to be like, yeah, when you're dealing with a short production period, the job of the director and the casting thing is, how do I bring in the people that bring the most tools so I don't have to do the least amount of work to get things where I need to get them in time to shoot it. And so I think Aaron and his team really did a great job of bringing a cast together that brought everything they needed so we could just execute on the day. And so on set, I was asking as many questions as I could about what's the proper way to stand, what's the proper way to move, to get some really specific to this project stuff. But I didn't have a ton of time previous to being on set, because I found out I got cast, and I think it was about 3 weeks later that we were filming. I had one, we
Yeah.
had one rehearsal with Cinema Forte where we got together and sort of roughly discussed and blocked what was going to be happening in the episode, but that was about it.
Yeah, I know when we were in the process of casting, I remember, you know, you were one of my votes for sure, just because I was like, okay, this guy really looks like King Richard must have looked, which, that's a huge part of it too. I
Yeah.
mean, he was a tall dude. He's, the blonde hair, the blonde beard works. I mean, that's basically what we know about what he looked like. So it was cool. I mean, I think everybody really fit into their roles well, which was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, a couple of interesting questions. I think you've kind of already addressed, but did you speak with a medieval French accent? Asks Berzelmeyer, and also Alexander kind of asked that too. Did you use a British accent or a French one? And
Yeah,
it kind of seemed to me like you guys were doing kind of like a British type of accent. Like that was the vibe, but it also almost had kind of a, what is it, New Atlantic? Is that the term you
Mhm.
hear sometimes?
Yeah, I think for the time that we had, or we were just trying to do what's called an RP, received pronunciation, which is just a standard film British dialect. It's not actually something that's really spoken in real world, but it's the film dialect for just sort of generic high class British. So assuming we were all, royalty and knights and dukes and sorts of things, that's the direction we went to make sure that we could at least try to make it uniform for the cast with the time that we had.
Yeah, and I think everybody did such a great job on that. So um, let's see here, and we got from Lambert. What was your experience with the history of Richard beforehand? Was 3 weeks enough to get a handle on his personality?
Hmm. That's a fascinating question, because it's like, in terms of like deep Crusades knowledge, admittedly, I didn't have it. Like, I'd taken world history and American, just like history classes throughout like high school and college. And so that was the base of my knowledge, understanding sort of the basics of the Crusades. But I had to do, in the 3 weeks, I did a lot of internet searching to be like, who is this guy? What is this guy about? So I did. It was an intense 3 weeks of trying to search to make sure that I could at least get a very general, strong sense of like, what was Richard about? But then what's fascinating is, in terms of like the personality and the energy, that's really up to the director and the production team. They tried to find someone to match their vision closest. And apparently sort of what I was bringing to the table kind of resonated with what they were feeling they wanted to have in terms of the energy of Richard. And then on set, once you did that, you'd bring all your tools, and then the directors there sort of working, saying like, we want a little bit of this nuance, or we want a little bit of this energy, to help really sort of craft what is the story that we want to tell with this character based on what you're seeing on screen. So it was 3 weeks of intense Google searching for me.
Yeah, and I know that Aaron and I really did a lot of work in terms of getting on paper how we wanted to convey this character. I mean, obviously, Richard the Lionheart is a hugely known historical figure. Aaron and I had a lot of conversations about how we were going to bring his personality to life, and that was an interesting process in itself, just because, I mean, I kind of approached it more as a writer and, historical researcher, which is what I do with, my YouTube channel. And he approached it more as a filmmaker.
Right.
And we had to kind of balance that. Obviously, we had a limited amount of time, in terms of what we could present. And we ended up really kind of focusing on this relationship between Richard and his sister and his knight. And kind of like, I mean, we wanted to bring to life the type of camaraderie that would have existed in a situation like this. I mean, this is a siege. A medieval siege was a very tough situation, kind of a claustrophobic type situation. Everybody's packed into these little war tents and trying to take down a city. And obviously there's the stress of war and violence all around you. And it's interesting because Richard did bring his sister and his wife. Actually, we weren't able to get his wife into the pilot episode because we had to focus on certain characters, but his wife and his sister were there while this was going on. And as far as we know, they were in probably his main war tent, which is kind of an interesting thing to imagine. Noble women of the 12th century in that situation, but it's probably not as uncommon as we might think. But Richard and his sister were good friends. This was his favorite sibling, Joanna, and she would have been a comforting presence to him, I'm sure. And also she would have been kind of a sisterly figure to his wife, Queen Berenguela. So I don't know. Talk about that a little bit, John, like in terms of your dynamic with the other actors. How do you feel like you guys worked together as a group?
I think it was fantastic because we met, I think for sure you could, and we were talking with Aaron, the director, and it said it could have scaled or skewed either way in terms of the cast. Like, do we want to cast this slightly older, right? Or do we want to cast this slightly, what is the visual sort of coloring that we want to do with it? And I think they ended up they picked the cast that they picked because everyone was really excellent, but we also had a very nice synergy together where we really did look like, the actress playing Joanna and I looked like we could be siblings, and the gentleman playing the lead knight was one, he had like the most beautiful booming voice, so low and so rich. When you see the episode, you'll just feel like, man, can you just please do radio tellings of any stories to me all the time? But it was fun because it's like the first day of shooting, and when you see the film, we did all of the stuff in the tent, and I spend most of the time in the tent passed out on the bed. So I got to spend pretty much all day one almost asleep, if not actually asleep, in the bed while the other two characters were doing all their intense scenes, like worrying about whatever, and the knights coming in, giving reports and things like that. And then at the very end of the day, I finally got to wake up and do the rejuvenated scene and like, let's go to battle. So I got to spend, it was really cool, all day just watching them work and appreciating sort of their craft. And then finally at the end of the day, I got to be like, haha, and now I get to join you, my friends, let's go to battle. And I think they were so into it that by the time I got to wake up and be in it, we had a short amount of time to film those last scenes, that they were just right there with me, and very open and very giving in terms of just because it was my only real big scene in the tent. They were willing to just sort of like relish in it with me. So I think in terms of actors, they're both incredibly giving and they were wonderful to work with. And I think our hope is now we get to air this episode, we get to have help fundraising for the next two, that we really get to develop those relationships in subsequent things. Like, so we've all come to this decision at the end of the episode, and now what is that going to mean for these friendships and relationships going on into the actual action of the crusade?
Yeah, definitely. And I would really love to get to see where that's going to go. We've been talking a lot about what that's going to mean. And just to let everybody know, this is a crowd-funded project. So we made the pilot because of the help we had from the audience, and we want to continue with that. So knightsofthecross.com is the place to go to help out with the crowdfunding campaign, and things have been going well over there. So we appreciate that for everybody who's been participating and contributing to the project. As a lot of you guys already know, there are a variety of tiers that you can choose from, all the way up to being on the show yourself. Like the $1,000 tier gets you a spot as an extra in costume on set, which we had several individuals who did that. Yeah.
And that was one of the coolest parts. I got to meet people from across the country who had either flown or driven out to be on set for the 2 days to fill in various roles. It was incredible to get to hear those people's stories and how passionate they were about the show. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was cool how the whole thing kind of had kind of a family type vibe. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody was kind of together, united by this thing, and we were, we were committed to it, and we were making it happen. So
Yeah,
it's
no. And I think that
pretty
was
cool.
what impressed me most about being on set. I didn't really know what to expect in terms of the project and everything, but what blew me away personally was that everybody there, I think, was there because they believed in the project, which isn't always the case, right? Oftentimes, or sometimes it's like, this is my job, right? I'm here, I'm doing this because this is what I've job. But I could tell by the energy on set, everybody was involved because they wanted to be involved, because they thought the idea was so exciting, and because they wanted to do what they could to bring the vision to life with the limited resources that we had. And the energy on set, both from the people who had helped fund it, who were there to fill in roles, to the production and all the creatives, like just in the trenches, literally saying, how do we make this? It was magical. It was so cool. And Ellie and Devin playing Joanna, and I can't remember, what is the lead knight's name? It's escaping me. Who did Devin play? What is the character's name?
William.
So Ellie and Devin playing Joanna and William
Mhm.
were the same way. And it was just like, everybody was there because we believed it had the potential to be an incredible project. And I think the way that episode 1 is going to come out is going to be really demonstrative of everybody's faith in the concept, faith in the project, and just the joy of getting to tell such a fun story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for the release of the pilot this weekend. In fact, John and I are both going to be in Salt Lake City this weekend for that. There's going to be a theater release for the actual pilot episode. So that's going to be very cool. Everybody else who's not going to be able to be there can watch it online on my YouTube channel. So there will be a lot of options for checking out the pilot. So John, it's so awesome to have you here. Let's take a couple more questions and then we'll kind of wrap things up. But just so everybody knows, we've got John Wilson, who plays Richard the Lionheart on the pilot episode of Knights of the Cross, who's with us here. So very glad to have John with us. John did such an awesome job with the pilot episode, as you guys will all be seeing very soon. So let's grab a couple more questions here. Let's see. A couple of these we've already sort of answered already. Sheila asks, how many hours did you put into a day? I'll let you answer that, John.
We're doing about 12. I think the first day it was almost 12, exactly 12 or 13. Second day the same, and it was like everyone was contracted for about 10, but everybody was just like, we've got to just keep going, which was kind of exciting, right?
Yeah.
We were all at the end of the day, we're like, no, we just keep going. We just keep going because we need to really make this work. So it was fun. It was about 12 hours for 2, and we shot it over 2 days. That was the other crazy thing. So when you see the episode, and I'm not sure how long it is, Jay, do you know how long it is at this point?
Yeah, it's about 25 minutes.
Yeah, so at 25 minutes. So it took approximately 24 hours of shooting plus weeks and months of pre-production planning to get those 24 minutes on film. And I had like clearly in 3 months of severe, intense editing to get it together. It's astonishing how much work goes into making a TV episode.
Yeah, I mean, I know, just as an example, they were talking about in the little featurette there, the issue of lighting. Like, that blew me away. I mean, I'm not a film person really at all, but like, they were matching the lighting with the virtual environments. So they've got these virtual environments that are lit a certain way, and when they're filming on the green screen, they've got to match the lighting to that. And watching them do that, I was just kind of like, wow, that's
the planning involved in making that execute is mind blowing. Because it's like we've all seen, either movies or shows where that planning wasn't done, and you can tell when the CGI just looks so janky. Because the way the actor's lit doesn't match the way that the background is lit. So it takes a ton of work to make the CGI seamless. And I really think Tarek Saran, who's been the head of the CG development in connection with Cinema Forte, they've been doing an incredible job. That's one of the things that actually blew my mind the most, was how sophisticated the CG is for some of these really cool scenes that Richard gets to go through while he's kind of in vision, while he's sick.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that's a big part of the pilot episode is this illness that Richard the Lionheart had when he first arrived at the Siege of Acre. And this was an opportunity to kind of explore some of the spiritual dimensions of his motivations, the conflict between his political motivations and his spiritual motivations. There was a lot of character development there. So
yeah, and I love it, and that they got to explore, the personal misgivings, the personal doubt, and having to reckon with the call, and it's really exciting to get to play and portray a man of faith answering that call from God.
Right, which is something we wanted to get across, because a lot of times in today's culture, there's this idea that Richard was just kind of like this big tough fighter and that's it. But the reality is, when you get into the history, you find that there was all this spiritual aspect to his motivation, and we wanted that to come through. So
yeah.
And we'll go ahead and do one more question. Bleak says, this is really a treat for the chat. Well, thank you, Bleak. Appreciate that. And this will be our last question for today. Zytron, what caused you to come to this project, and what expectations did you have for it? Thank you, Zytron.
Yeah. So I got the notification through our agency that this project existed. And they asked, it was a project where they was like, if you'd like to submit for it, you could. And so I looked over the details and saw that there was the opportunity to audition for the role of Richard, and I was sold pretty much right away. I was like, oh heck yeah! I looked up pictures, and I was like, okay. And I read the scene. They always send an audition scene with a notification, and I saw it, and I was like, no, that's way cool. That's pretty incredible. And so we sent in our headshots first to sort of like see if they'd even want to consider us based on just the look, because film is a visual medium, right? The look of the characters is really important. And once I got past that round and I got the opportunity to submit it, we filmed it, sent it in. And the thing is I really didn't know what to expect, because they had let us know that it was going to be an intense process, that we were going to be, kind of coming together by the skin of our teeth to really put this together in the short time that we had. And so I didn't know what to expect. It could have varied. And this was my own personal thing, especially because I was new to film. Could have varied. I was like, maybe this is like a $2 budget thing where we're just going to be pretending really, 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 really hard with limited costumes and limited props. It could be anything different. So I was kind of going into it blind, just being like, the role is so cool and the concept is so neat that I'm wanting to do it regardless of what it ended up being. And then when I got to set and realized that we had these people bringing historical armor pieces from southern Utah, and my armor suit weighed 72 pounds. We weighed me. It was crazy. So it was like all of a sudden I was enveloped in this like completely legit world where everybody was at the top of their class. It blew me away. I was so surprised and so thrilled. It blew my expectations out of the water. Everybody involved in the set, every single person involved in the set was incredible.
Yeah, the costuming was really good. The layout of the sets was really good in terms of the historical accuracy. So
right.
It was
awesome. And you have to get creative, right? When you don't have $6 billion per episode like a Marvel thing, you have to get creative. Like, how do we execute on this vision without $6 bajillion? And the creativity involved in the way that the tent was designed, the creativity involved in the way that they integrated the green screen shooting using the CGI engine to evoke the locations for the other things, the way that they decided to do and shoot the purgatory scene. It was so creative. And that I think was the most thrilling thing, is everybody's juices were like on max on how do we portray this in a cinematic way that shows audience members this is what we want to accomplish with this series. and gives them a real sort of thing to sink their teeth into and say, yeah, I want to make that happen. I want to see something like that portraying those stories of faith on TV. And so I really think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and Minotaur here asks, when will it be released? That's a good final question. I guess that'll be our final question. Yeah, it's coming out this weekend, guys. So November 18th is the official release date for the pilot. Just navigate to my YouTube channel. It'll be there on the 18th, and you guys can watch it. And that's going to launch us into, hopefully the next phase of the Knights of the Cross fundraising campaign. So again, that happens at knightsofthecross.com. If you guys like what you see this weekend, if the pilot is inspiring to you, if you want us to take it to the next level, go to knightsofthecross.com and give us a little bit of love over there. I know that one of the things that Austin's been saying is we really have everything in place we need to do it. It's just a matter of continuing with the funding. I mean, in terms of, we've got the actors, we've got the crew, we've got the production company. I mean, Cinema Forte, these guys can deliver. I mean, all they need is the budget. So Greg and Aaron and Brent, they've got all that ready to go for us. So, there's a lot of confidence that we have there in that. So, cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here today. John, I really want to say how much I appreciate you coming and being a part of the stream today. Hopefully we can have you back, and I'll see you this weekend for the release.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, thanks for being here with us. Big thanks to John. Big thanks to everybody who's been involved with Knights of the Cross. We will see you this weekend for the release. Knights of the Cross pilot episode comes out on the 18th over at the Real Crusades History YouTube channel. We will see you then.